Hello again, this is Chapter 3 and we're going to look at the clock display project and specifically the number display class. In a later video you'll be able to see the internal and external consideration of the number display class, but in this one we're going to introduce some concepts which you need to know for the class. We're going to look at abstraction and modularisation briefly, then we're going to go into operators and expressions, and then I'm going to show you a quick way of testing things in BlueJ, which is using the code pad. So, consider a digital clock. Now, digital clock, as seen there, shows the time 11:03, and if we wanted to represent that in code, how might we do it? We might represent it as a single time, or we might represent it in other ways, and we're going to consider how maybe to break down that now. Two concepts based on that. We've got the abstraction, which we've considered previously, which is the ability to ignore details of certain processes and functions within a system so that you understand the system as a whole. The example I gave previously was ignoring how a spark plug works in your car, however you still rely on it and just accept that it does work. Another term which we're going to use and get used to is modularisation. Now, modularisation is effectively the divide and conquer technique, which you may have used before if you've got a large problem to reduce it into smaller parts. And so that's what we're going to try and introduce to you in this lesson. So going back to our clock idea, here's our digital clock. We can represent that as one 4-digit display, or we can represent it as two 2-digit displays to try and break down the problem into smaller pieces. So once we achieve one piece, then we can start to bring it all together. Now we're going to have a look at the operators. For a detailed overview of the operators, see Appendix C, which is around page 507, I think 506, 507. Have a look at the operators in Appendix C. First of all, the arithmetic expressions, which you'll all hopefully be okay with, just your standard for arithmetic operators, addition, subtraction, multiplication and division. The other one which you may or may not have come across is the modulo. If you haven't come across this, then have a listen, otherwise you can skip on the video. In order to do a modulo, it's for use with whole numbers. So when we're using integers, which you've been introduced to the type integer previously, it's important that sometimes you need to find the remainder of what's left. So for example, if you take the first line, let me just set up a little thing here. If you see this first line here, 5 divided by 3, if you do that in integers, 5 divided by 3 is 1, however there's 2 left. So if we do 5 modulo 3, that gives us a remainder of 2. So that gives 5 modulo 3 is 2. Similarly with, let's just get rid of that now. Similarly with the second line there, we've got 13 divided by 5. Well, 13 divided by 5 is 2 if you just look in terms of integers and whole numbers. But there is actually 13 divided by 5 is 2. There's 2 5s is 10, so that gives you a remainder of 3. So 13 modulo 5 is equal to 3. We can also do modulo numbers which are higher than the number which is being considered. So in this case we're going to do 2 divided by 12. As you know, 2 divided by 12 is 0. There are no 12s in 2. However, there is some remaining. So there is actually 2 remaining. So 2 modulo 12 equals 2. Now, if you're unsure about that, then I want you to just experiment a little bit with what we use in BlueJ called the code pad. So let's have a quick look at the code pad here. On your BlueJ display here, I've got the clock display opened. If you click View and then Show Code Pad, shortcut for that is Control-E. That gives you a code pad down the bottom, and you can experiment using different things. We're going to use that later on and for all sorts of experimentation. We can just do 5 plus 3, and that will give what we expect. So that will give what we expect, and will also give the type as well, which is going to be useful when we're playing later on. The other thing you can do then, you can use your modulo, and you can test out modulo. If you're unsure of what the modulo is, then you can just do a 5 modulo 3, and again 34 modulo 65, and that'll give our our modulo answer there. So if you're unsure of how modulo works, have a look at the video again, and also have a little play on your code pad in BlueJ. So moving on, those arithmetic operators, we've also got our logical operators. When you look at the class in the clock display or in the number display class, you're going to see that these logical operators are used. I want to just explain to them now. When we want to have an if statement, if you remember previously, we just when we did the amount if statement, and we did amount is greater than 0 when we were just testing to make sure that it was not a negative number. Another thing you can do is have two of those Boolean type statements within an if statement, and then you can use an and, or, a not, or an XOR to consider that. So you could have a certain thing and a certain other thing. Now in Java we have to represent it with two little ampersands there, and two pipes for the or, and an exclamation mark, and then an up chevron there. So that's how we represent that in Java. I'm not going to go through the examples because I expect you understand what ands and ors and things are. Relational operators is the final thing we're going to consider now. We've got the within a if statement. If we want to say if something equals something else, then we will use the equal to relational operator. However, we have to use two equals. It's the way that it works in Java. A single equals means assignment. So if you want to, if you just want to create a new integer, you'll say int my integer equals 3. So that equals there is used as an assignment. However, Java will get confused if you use the same equals. So within an if statement, you must use two equals to be equal to. The rest are pretty obvious, apart from maybe not equal to. That not commands there, the exclamation mark can be used on its own, or it can be used with an equals, and that is not equal to. So you'll maybe see that not in the future. Less than or equal to or greater than equal to is also possible. Okay, so that concludes the discussion around operators in Java. In the next session, we're going to consider the external and internal view of the number display, and you'll need to know everything you've learned from this section before you look at the internal and external view of the number display. See you then.